Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now the Treasury wading into the referendum campaign, the government to get its first look at the Chilcot report and President Obama's farewell tour. All questions for the week ahead. Janan, we're going to get the Treasury's coming out with a report on what it will mean for the economy if we leave the EU. The Chancellor will wade in as well. It's supposed to be pretty dire, the consequences. But given the Chancellor's stock is, how shall I put it, not exactly his highest, does it matter?
Probably not, and even if his stock were much higher, it's still the government advocating for its own position. And so your average voter might look at it and think, well, they would say that, wouldn't they? On its own, the Treasury report doesn't matter. On its own, the IMF doesn't matter. On its own, Mark Carney's interventions don't matter. On its own, the big business interventions don't matter. Combine them all, though, and I think in the run-up to the June 23rd vote, the drip of elite opinion or establishment opinion or mainstream opinion, however you want to phrase it, I think probably does impinge on the minds of a nervous swing voter. And there is a huge anti-establishment zeitgeist in this country and internationally. But you can resent the establishment and still take them seriously when they're fairly unified on a question of pounds and pence in your family budget.
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? The Remain campaign has all the big battalions on its side. The issue is, and if you listen to the big battalions and you rate the big battalions, then you would vote to Remain. But as Janan says, we're in as we see in America, and we can see here too, a lot of anti-establishment sentiment is around. So if you have Mr. Cameron, Lord Ashdown, Mr. Kinnock, Lord Kinnock, President Obama, Goldman Sachs, the IMF, the CBI, it could be these are exactly the kind of people they want to take it out on.
Well, absolutely. And I was speaking to somebody prominent from the Brexit lot yesterday, and they said they cheered when they saw that photograph of Kinnock and Cameron and, you know, all these people lined up. They think that actually plays to their cause. I mean, I agree pretty much with everything that Janan said, that it is the drip, and I think that people generally don't go into the minutiae. They get a sense of things. But I think that you know, the anti-establishment feeling is something that's definitely accumulating, and you feel it out there, definitely.
And yes, you can feel it.
You know what's interesting about this is George Osborne takes the view that you can actually he could lose the argument in one area here, the process argument, which is it's outrageous the government spending £9 million on this leaflet. This isn't the done thing. The Electoral Commission are not happy. And Brexit, his view, could win that argument. But the argument he needs to win is the substance argument, what Janan was talking about. And George Osborne's view is the electorate don't really tune into the process argument. We do, and we get really excited, but the electorate tune into the substance argument, and that's where he thinks, as Janan was saying, eventually he will prevail.
I mean, in terms of the specific intervention by the Treasury does have form on this. If you think back to the referendum in Scotland, Indeed. They had a very meticulously prepared document, and I remember at the time that they were sitting on it and waiting for the exact moment where they thought it would be most powerful. Now, of course, the Brexit side of things will have a very, very prepared rebuttal for everything that report says. So I wonder whether it will just kind of disappear into the he says, she says, on the one hand, on the other, and it will cancel each other out.
Here's the issue I can't quite scare. If you look at the reports this morning of the line the Treasury and the Chancellor are going to take, it's very scary. They're saying our economy is going to be in a real mess. Billions lost in investment, danger of rising unemployment, even interest rates might go up, mortgages might go up, and growth is going to be hit. If you look at it, let's say all of that's true. Well, all of that was true whether or not Mr. Cameron had done his deal with Europe.
Yeah.
It was true. So even if he hadn't done a deal with Europe, surely it would follow that we should still stay in if you accept all that. And doesn't that kind of undermine the government's credibility?
Well, it undermines a deal which nobody has talked about since February when it was
No, Tristram Hunt was the first one this morning to mention it for a long time.
It's a complete irrelevance. And if you believe, as the Treasury will argue, that Brexit is a tremendous existential economic risk, even the fact of calling a referendum.
You would wonder why risk it?
Absolutely. So I think, but these are all very good arguments against David Cameron, against George Osborne, against the government and its handling. I still don't think it quite translates into an argument in favour of voting to leave, if you see what I mean.
I understand.
It's the internal politics.
Jeremy Corbyn made his intervention last week with the speech. Do we know yet what else he's going to do?
Campaign with great enthusiasm to keep Britain in the European Union. No, look, we all know what Jeremy Corbyn thinks. He is from that element of the Labour Party. We used to call them Benites, who campaigned for no in 1975, accepted the result in 1975 for about 5 minutes, and then obviously signed up to the 1983 manifesto, which said that Britain should leave the European Union. He was that element of the Labour Party that did not buy into Jacques Delors' famous intervention.
So will he do much more or not?
He's not going to be that enthusiastic, but he's sort of, you know, ticking the box. When he became leader, he found himself boxed into a corner, signed up with Hilary Benn and signed up to membership of the European Union. And the calculation that Jeremy Corbyn made was, I, as the new leader of the Labour Party, have got much bigger battles to fight. Trident is a big issue for me. So he's going to do a box-ticking exercise.
But it's a problem for Mr Cameron, isn't it? Because from the look of the polls at the moment, a majority of Conservative-inclined voters are probably going to vote to leave. So to win, Mr Cameron needs to get out the Labour vote and the centre-left vote. But if that's all Mr Corbyn's going to do, that may be more difficult.
I mean, he sounded so half-hearted, didn't he? And, you know, if I was still on a Sunday newspaper, what I would be doing would be deploying people to track Jeremy Corbyn at all these little low-profile events that he goes to where nobody thinks that there's any press there. And let's hear what he really thinks, because I bet you in private you'd get the comments which would expose his true position.
But how does he get how does the Remain get the Labour vote out? They need that Labour vote.
Well, they need other advocates. I mean, they've got Alistair Darling, who is a strong Labour figure, still held in immense respect by many members of the Labour Party. But I think it's difficult. And, you know, we keep coming back to this point about turnout in this referendum.
Yes. What about the president, Mr Obama, coming here? We don't exactly know how he's going to couch it, but we know what line he's going to take.
Yeah.
Does that have an impact? Will that influence how people think about our position in Europe?
To the extent that it is another voice on top of the ones we mentioned earlier, and in combination they matter more than you might think they matter individually. I think the reason Obama matters disproportionately is that a big part of the Leave argument rests on this idea that were you to leave the European Union, there's a world of opportunity out there, and in particular trade deals with countries like the
we're
US.
Close with America, and we have NATO,
yes,
and all the rest of it.
And so if one of those foreign governments, the biggest of the lot, intervenes and makes the opposite point, then it does undercut the Leave argument by quite a bit, I think. I imagine, actually, before the referendum, that the interventions by foreign governments will be more decisive than the interventions by big business domestically.
Yes.
Because if you have the New Zealand, Australian, Chinese, Japanese, Indians, and above all the Americans saying, don't expect any special treatment or immediate trade deals. They won't phrase it any more strongly than that.
Cumulatively, that could have an
yes,
impact.
it makes
Do you
me
think
wonder what they're going to...
the president will have much of an impact?
I think that the Brexit campaigners are sort of surprisingly relaxed about this, which suggests to me that they don't think he will have that much impact. I think that there is a sense that perhaps America, I'm not saying about President Obama himself, but may not understand the real minutiae of this debate and exactly what it is that we find, many people here find so objectionable about the EU. And there's always that thing about, you know, don't waltz over here and tell us what to do.
But the Brexit campaigners weren't initially relaxed. I mean, there was this letter to the embassy saying he shouldn't be coming and intervening.
Indeed.
And actually they got their act together and thought, well, that's a silly process argument, so let's focus on the substance. And the Boris Johnson interview the BBC when he says the president is a hypocrite because he would never accept the surrendering of that level of sovereignty. That's an argument on substance. That's where they should be focusing their attention.
Now, my understanding is that the Chilcot report of great longevity and its appearance goes to the Downing Street. Downing Street looks through it maybe later this week to see if there's any national security implications before it gets published. But here's an interesting question. Should the Chilcot report be published during the referendum campaign?
I don't see a principled reason why it shouldn't, actually. I mean, you could argue that if it taints the establishment and leaving the European Union is kind of an anti-establishment thing to do, then it gives a it favours one side over the other.
Yes.
But that's almost an indirect impact. If the report is ready and all the vetting and final editing work on it has been done, I see no principled reason why it can't come out when it has to come out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It seems to me, I was trying to work out, does this favour one side or the other? And it seems to me that it doesn't really. I mean, no doubt everything at the moment is being seen through the prism of the EU referendum campaign. But at the end of the day, it's about the lessons that need to be learned and the families who are desperate for it to come out.
And of course, we're all desperate to see it, so I'm not arguing myself that it should be delayed. But I just wondered the principle of bringing it out in the referendum campaign. I suppose, as the gentleman says, if you're anti-establishment minded and the establishment gets some kind of kicking in this Joker report or confirms all you've ever thought about it, then it could have a marginal impact.
Or you could say that, you know, Jacques Chirac and other EU leaders back in 2003 said that the war was a disaster and maybe we should have a common foreign and security
Because it
policy.
wasn't an EU venture.
You could argue, but I mean...
It'd be more of an issue if Mr. Blair was playing a huge role in the campaign.
Where is he? Where is
Well,
Tony
I
Blair?
think I heard he wanted to be more
Yes.
involved.
Well, it's
and
early days.
He was
He may
pretty
well
much
have
advised
For
to
some
keep his
reason,
head
the
down.
Remain people don't seem to be terribly keen on having Tony Blair
Funny that.
around.
Well,
I
we're
wonder
always
why.
available for interviews. Thank you.